why only these four gospels are found in the Bible?
Let's begin by making something very clear. The Gospels that we have in our New Testament, we have four Gospels, right? They were all written in Greek. Keep in mind, Jesus did not speak Greek. Jesus spoke in Aramaic. Just to remind ourselves that the Old Testament is written in Hebrew and the New Testament, all the writings are in Greek, which was the lingua franca of the time, like kind of English has become in our time. So each of the four Gospels that later on in the tradition of the church, the early church decided to have these four. They had some reasons for that. Canonicity, apostolicity, they had certain criteria that they followed. But each of them was written to a different audience. But the purpose was always the same, to help the readers who were followers of Jesus to follow him passionately, not to give up, and also maybe share their faith with others. So when we read the Gospels, there is both this diversity, that for us can be something like, why do we have this diversity? And there is also unity. There is no uniformity. So if we were looking for uniformity, we may be dismayed and we see some different parts of the story. But that is the beauty of God. I believe one of the reasons is God loves diversity. And so each gospel writer, by the way, none of them knew that their writings will land up in something called the New Testament. Okay, nobody in the first century knew a New Testament is coming. So they wrote to their communities, their version of the gospel. And later on, the church said, we need all these four. And the question is, why only four? I'm glad there are only four. There could be 40. It would be difficult to study them. The early church made this decision, as I said, based on certain criteria, or it had to be written by an apostle or under the supervision or authority of an apostle. You know, it's very interesting, the question somebody asked, why not one, why four? In the second century, people thought about it, and one wonderful man of God, Cherian, decided to, first of all, translate the Gospels from Greek to Syriac, and then put all the four together into one writing which he called the Diatessaron. Dia through Tessa, four through the four. Can you imagine that work? I don't know if it's easy to do. First of all, translating into Syriac and then putting it together. But guess what? The early church looked at it and said, thank you, Cherian, this is fantastic. But no thank you. We still want to have our four Gospels. So we have these four beautifully diverse Gospels instead of the one Gospel. But the important thing that I would like to say here is that every Gospel has its own way of connecting the story of Jesus with what had happened earlier, the previous story of God's people, Israel. They all do it so interestingly differently. Just to give you one example, John 15 and verse 1, Jesus says, I am the true vine, the branch, and you are the branches. And we hear that and we sometimes don't get what Jesus is saying there. Jesus is connecting the story of Israel here. You see, Israel has been called a vine. If you look at Psalm 80, verse 8 to 15, you look at Isaiah 5, Israel is called a vine. And from there, the story of Israel continues. And Jesus now comes and says, now it's time to show you where Israel is. I am the true Israel. So every gospel connects it beautifully, the story with the story of Israel, and it goes on. And so we have these four beautiful perspectives on the gospel, and each gospel presents to us as disciples a unique shape of discipleship. We need all these four gospels because they teach us from different perspectives what it means to be a follower of Jesus.